He saw the school bag before he saw her. Then the Hell's Angel realized why she was there. The rumble of the motorcycle beneath him was the closest thing to peace Max Reeves had known in 20 years. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the highway, painting the worn asphalt in shades of gold and amber. Max adjusted his grip on the handlebars, his weathered hands marked with faded tattoos that told stories of a younger, wilder man. The highway stretched before him, empty except for the occasional passing car. This was how he preferred it. Just him, his Harley, and miles of open road. The leather cut on his back bearing the Hell's Angels patch had seen better days, frayed at the edges from years of wind and weather, much like the man who wore it. As he leaned into a gentle curve, memories washed over him like the breeze that cut through his gray beard. 20 years. 20 long years since he'd heard his daughter's voice. "You're no father," she had said, her teenage face twisted with anger and disappointment. "You're just a man who was sometimes there." Those words had cut deeper than any knife. The worst part was knowing she was right. Max eased off the throttle, letting the bike's rumble soften as the painful memory played out. His daughter would be 35 now. Did she have children? Was she happy? Did she ever think about him? Questions without answers had become his constant companions on these solitary rides. Before you continue listening, please let me know where in the world are you watching from today. Now, back to the story. The setting sun glinted off his chrome handlebars as Max rolled past a sign indicating the town of Millfield was 10 miles ahead. He wasn't heading anywhere in particular, just riding, as he had been for weeks. Town to town, motel to motel, carrying everything he owned in saddlebags and trying to outrun ghosts that refused to be left behind. His phone hadn't rung in days. The club brothers checked in occasionally, but even they had learned to give him space during these dark anniversaries. 20 years since his daughter walked away. 15 years since that rainy night under the bridge. The night that changed everything. Max swallowed hard, feeling the familiar tightness in his chest. That night played on repeat in his nightmares. Headlights cutting through rain, a flash of movement, the sickening thud. Then panic, flight, the coward's response that haunted his every quiet moment. "You're better than your mistakes, Max," his sponsor had told him in his 5th year of sobriety, "but you gotta own them first." He'd been sober 12 years now. Clean living, honest work when he could find it, but some debts couldn't be paid with changed behavior and good intentions. Some required a reckoning he wasn't sure he could face. The highway dipped and curved through rolling hills as afternoon faded toward evening. Max felt the temperature dropping, the air growing heavier with the promise of rain. Fitting weather for the dark clouds in his mind. He passed a mile marker and felt his heart rate quicken. Without consciously planning it, he had circled back to this stretch of highway. The same one he traveled every year, drawn by guilt and memory to the scene of his greatest shame. The overpass came into view ahead, concrete and steel rising above the highway, casting a long shadow across his path. Max felt his hands trembling slightly on the handlebars. 15 years ago tonight, in the rain, beneath that same bridge. He slowed the motorcycle, pulling toward the shoulder of the road. This wasn't planned, yet somehow it was inevitable. Every year, his wandering led him here, a pilgrimage of penance to a shrine of his own making. The bike growled lower as he eased to a stop about 50 yards from the overpass. Killing the engine, he sat for a moment in the sudden silence, broken only by the distant sound of birds and the occasional passing car on the road above. Max swung his leg over the bike, boots crunching on gravel as he removed his helmet. His eyes scanned the area beneath the bridge, the sloping concrete, the scattered trash, the shadows gathering as evening approached. That's when he saw it. A small, worn school bag leaning against one of the concrete pillars. Something about it stopped him cold. It wasn't trash or an abandoned item. It was placed too deliberately, a splash of faded purple against the gray concrete. Max took a hesitant step forward, then another. The school bag had patches and pins decorating its front pocket, the strap frayed and mended with duct tape. A child's bag, but with no child in sight. He moved closer to the overpass, his heart pounding in his chest. Max approached the bridge slowly, his heavy boots crunching against the gravel. Something wasn't right about that school bag sitting all alone. It was too neat, too purposefully placed. As he drew closer to the concrete pillar, the shadows beneath the overpass deepened, swallowing details in their murky darkness. "Hello?" he called out, his gruff voice softened with uncertainty. "Anybody there?" At first, silence answered him. Then a small movement caught his eye, something shifting in the deepest part of the shadow. Max squinted, stepping closer. His heart stuttered in his chest when he realized what he was seeing. A small figure huddled against the concrete, arms wrapped tightly around drawn-up knees. A child. A little girl. She couldn't have been more than 10 years old, with dark hair falling around a pale face. Her eyes, wide with fear, reflected what little light penetrated the shadows. She pressed herself harder against the concrete pillar as he approached, as if hoping to disappear into it. Max stopped immediately, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. He was painfully aware of how he must look to her, a large man in worn jeans and a leather cut, his face weathered by years on the road, gray beard wild around his mouth. "Hey there," he said, making his voice as gentle as possible. "You okay, kiddo?" The girl didn't answer. Her gaze darted between his face and the motorcycle parked on the shoulder. Her fingers clutched at the sleeve of her faded blue jacket. Max crouched down, keeping a safe distance between them. He knew better than to move closer. At 6'2" with shoulders like a linebacker, he'd spent years learning how to make himself seem less threatening. "My name's Max," he offered. "I was just riding by and saw your school bag. Thought maybe someone needed help." The girl's eyes narrowed slightly, focused now on the patches on his leather cut. Max followed her gaze to the winged death's head emblem that marked him as Hell's Angels. "I know I look scary," he acknowledged with a small smile, "but I promise I'm not going to hurt you." When she still didn't speak, Max settled back on his heels, considering his options. The girl was clearly alone, and it was getting dark. He couldn't just leave her here. "Are you lost?" He tried again. "Do you need me to call someone? Your parents must be worried." At the mention of parents, something flickered across the girl's face, a brief expression of pain quickly hidden. She shifted slightly, reaching for the purple school bag beside her. In one quick movement, she pulled it onto her lap and hugged it tightly against her chest. "I can help you get home," Max said. "Or I can call the police if you want. They can help find your folks." The girl's head snapped up at that, her eyes suddenly fierce despite her fear. She shook her head violently. "No police," she whispered, her voice so quiet Max barely caught the words. They were the first words she'd spoken, and they carried a weight of determination that surprised him. Max nodded slowly, respecting her wish even as concern deepened in his chest. "Okay," he agreed. "No police, but it's getting dark, and it's not safe for you to be out here alone." The girl clutched her school bag tighter, her knuckles white against the faded purple fabric. "What's your name?" Max asked gently. She pressed her lips together, refusing to answer. The wind picked up slightly, rustling through the sparse trees beyond the overpass. The temperature was dropping as evening settled in. "Are you hungry?" he tried instead. "I've got some snacks on my bike. Nothing fancy, just some granola bars and water." Something flickered in the girl's eyes. Interest, perhaps hunger. But still she remained silent, watching him with the wariness of someone far older than her years. Max recognized that look. It was the look of someone who had learned not to trust easily, someone who had been hurt before. It made his heart ache. "Listen," he said softly. "I understand if you don't want to talk to me, but it's getting cold, and I can't just ride away knowing you're here all alone." The girl's fingers worked nervously at a frayed patch on the school bag, a faded rainbow that had been sewn on with uneven stitches. She looked down at it, avoiding his eyes. "I'm not leaving," she finally said, her voice stronger now. "You can go." Max sighed, running a hand through his beard. "At least tell me if there's someone I can call for you. Someone who isn't the police." The girl shook her head again, drawing the school bag even closer to her chest like a shield. Her eyes, filled with a mixture of fear and stubborn determination, met his briefly before looking away. As twilight deepened the shadows beneath the overpass, Max stood up slowly, his knees cracking with the movement. The girl flinched at the sound, pressing herself further against the concrete pillar. "I'm just going to my bike to get some food," he explained, pointing to his motorcycle. "I'll be right back. Not going anywhere else, okay?" The girl watched him warily, but gave a tiny nod. Max walked back to his Harley, conscious of keeping his movements slow and predictable. He reached into his saddlebag and pulled out a small stash of snacks: 2 granola bars, a package of beef jerky, and a bottle of water he'd filled that morning. When he returned to the overpass, he found the girl exactly where he'd left her, clutching the school bag to her chest like a life preserver. Max settled down on the ground about 10 feet away from her, creating a respectful distance between them. He placed the food and water on the ground halfway between them. "Not much of a dinner," he said with a small smile, "but it'll take the edge off hunger." The girl eyed the offerings, her gaze lingering on the water bottle. The evening was growing cooler, and Max noticed her shoulders trembling slightly. Without a word, he shrugged off his leather jacket, revealing a faded black t-shirt underneath, and placed it next to the food. "In case you get cold," he explained. "No pressure." For several long minutes, neither of them moved. Traffic rumbled overhead, each passing car sending vibrations through the concrete pillars. In the distance, birds called to each other as they settled in for the night. Finally, hunger won out over caution. The girl inched forward, still clutching her school bag with one arm while reaching for the water bottle with her free hand. She retreated quickly to her spot after grabbing it, twisting the cap off with practiced fingers. She took small, careful sips, her eyes never leaving Max's face. "Good?" he asked. She nodded slightly, then ventured forward again to snatch a granola bar before retreating. Max watched as she tore open the wrapper with her teeth and took a small bite. She ate slowly, savoring each morsel as if unsure when she might eat again. The sky above the overpass darkened from purple to indigo. Max glanced at his watch. Nearly 8 o'clock. "It's getting late," he said gently. "Is there someone who might be worried about you?" The girl shook her head, swallowing a bite of granola bar. "Nobody's looking for me." Her voice was soft but surprisingly steady. Max felt a pang in his chest at her words. "I find that hard to believe," he said. "A kid your age should have someone looking out for them." She shrugged, taking another bite instead of responding. "What's your name?" Max tried again. "I told you mine." The girl hesitated, studying him as if weighing whether this information was safe to share. "Emma," she finally said. "Nice to meet you, Emma," Max replied, keeping his tone light. "Though I wish it was under better circumstances." Emma finished the granola bar and reached cautiously for the beef jerky, this time not retreating to her corner. She sat cross-legged about 5 feet away from Max, the school bag still in her lap. "You don't have to stay," she said, tearing off a piece of jerky with her teeth. "I'm okay by myself." "Under a bridge at night?" Max raised his eyebrows. "Not the safest place for anyone, especially not a kid." Emma's jaw set stubbornly. "I'm not leaving." "Why not? What are you waiting for?" She looked away, her fingers tightening around the school bag. "It's none of your business," Max sighed, scratching his beard thoughtfully. Darkness had fully settled now, the space beneath the overpass illuminated only by the distant glow of streetlights and passing car headlights. "Emma, I can't leave you here alone," he said firmly. "If you won't let me take you home or call someone, at least let me call the police. They can help." "No!" Her voice rose sharply, almost panicked. "No police, please, I told you I'm waiting." "Waiting for what?" Max pressed, his concern growing. Emma's expression closed off. She pulled the school bag closer and stared at the ground. "Just waiting. I do this every year." Max frowned, processing this unexpected information. "Every year? You come to sit under this bridge every year?" She nodded but offered no further explanation. "It's important to you," Max said, making it a statement rather than a question. "Yes," Emma whispered. "It's important." The shadows lengthened as night crept in, transforming the underpass into a pocket of darkness broken only by the occasional sweep of headlights from above. Max watched as Emma huddled against the concrete pillar, her small frame wrapped in his oversized leather jacket. She looked even younger now, swallowed up by the worn black leather emblazoned with the Hell's Angels patches. "Getting colder," Max observed, rubbing his hands together. Without his jacket, the evening chill seeped through his t-shirt. But he didn't mind. "You warm enough?" Emma nodded, her fingers playing with the zipper of his jacket. "Thanks," she murmured, the word barely audible above the rumble of traffic overhead. A semi-truck thundered across the overpass, making the ground beneath them vibrate. Max leaned back against the concrete wall, stretching out his legs. His joints ached from sitting on the hard ground, a reminder of age creeping up on him. "You know," he said after a while, "I had a daughter once." Emma looked up, curiosity flickering in her eyes. "Her name is Lily," Max continued, staring at the graffiti-covered wall opposite them. "She'd be about 26 now, I guess." "What happened to her?" Emma asked, her voice small in the vastness of the underpass. Max sighed deeply, the familiar ache spreading through his chest. "Nothing happened to her. Something happened to me." He plucked a small rock from the ground, turning it over in his weathered hands. "I made bad choices, lots of them. When she was about your age, I wasn't the father she deserved." The memory of Lily's face, framed by dark pigtails, eyes wide with disappointment, flashed through his mind. He tossed the rock, watching it skitter across the pavement. "I missed her school plays, forgot birthdays, chose riding with the club over being there when she needed me." His voice grew rougher, edged with regret. "Her mom finally had enough. They moved away when Lily was 12. I got Christmas cards for a couple years, then nothing." Emma pulled the jacket tighter around herself, listening intently now. "Last I heard, she graduated college. Got that from an old friend who ran into her mom at a grocery store." Max offered a sad smile. "She's smart, my Lily. Always was." Did you try to find her? Emma asked. Max nodded slowly. Few times, but maybe some bridges stay burned, you know? Maybe that's what I deserve. He cleared his throat. Been on the road ever since. Just me and my Harley, taking odd jobs here and there. The confession hung in the air between them. Max wasn't sure why he was telling this small, wary girl his deepest regrets, but something about her reminded him of Lily. That same stubborn tilt to the chin, the watchful intelligence in her eyes. People think guys like me, big, scary bikers, we don't feel things the way others do. Max gestured to his tattooed arms and beard. But under all this, we're just people who made choices, some good, some bad, and we live with them. Emma's fingers traced the outline of her school bag, her expression thoughtful. Do you miss her? Every day, Max replied without hesitation. Some mornings I wake up and for a second, I forget that I lost her. Then it hits me all over again. He looked directly at Emma. That's the thing about regret, kid. It doesn't get lighter with time. You just get stronger at carrying it. Emma nodded as if she understood perfectly, which surprised Max. What could a child her age know about carrying regrets? Is that why you stopped? She asked. Because I reminded you of her? Max considered the question. Maybe. Or maybe because I've spent so many years looking out for only myself that it felt right to look out for someone else for a change. A comfortable silence fell between them. Emma's shoulders relaxed slightly, her grip on the school bag loosening. Though she still kept it close, her posture had softened, the wariness in her eyes giving way to something more contemplative. I still don't understand why you're here, Emma, Max said gently. This isn't a place for kids, especially not at night. Emma's gaze dropped to the school bag in her lap. For a moment, Max thought she might finally explain, but she simply shook her head. It's important, she repeated softly. I have to be here. Though her guard was still up, something had shifted. The wall between them hadn't fallen, but perhaps a small window had opened. Max didn't push further. Some truths needed time to emerge on their own. Night had fully settled now, wrapping the underpass in a blanket of darkness. The occasional car passing overhead sent fleeting patterns of light dancing across the concrete, briefly illuminating Emma's face before plunging her back into shadow. Max shifted uncomfortably on the hard ground, his back protesting after hours of sitting against the concrete pillar. He reached into his saddlebag and pulled out a small flashlight. Its beam cut through the darkness, casting a soft glow between them. Emma blinked at the sudden light, her face pale and tired in its glow. Getting late, Max said, placing the flashlight upright so it illuminated their small corner like a campfire. Your folks must be worried sick about you. Emma's expression hardened slightly. I told you, I don't need help. Nobody's looking for me. Max studied her for a moment, noting the determined set of her jaw. Despite her small size and the oversized leather jacket drowning her frame, there was something undeniably resilient about her. You know, he said carefully, I've been sitting here for hours now, and I still don't know why. He gestured to the dreary underpass. This isn't exactly a 5-star hotel. There's got to be a reason you picked this spot. Emma's fingers tightened around the worn school bag in her lap. The zipper was broken, Max noticed, hanging by a thread and crudely fastened with a safety pin. It's personal, she murmured. I get that, Max nodded. But it's also not safe. I might look scary, but I'm harmless. The next person who comes along might not be. A truck rumbled overhead, its heavy weight making the bridge vibrate slightly. When it passed, the silence between them seemed even deeper. You told me about your daughter, Emma said suddenly. About your mistakes. I did. Why? Max rubbed his beard thoughtfully. Sometimes it's easier talking to strangers. They don't have history with you, no expectations. Emma seemed to consider this, her small fingers tracing the frayed edge of the school bag. For a moment, Max thought she might retreat back into silence, but then she took a deep breath. I'm not lost, she said firmly. Okay, Max replied, keeping his voice neutral. I'm here because I chose to be here. She lifted her chin slightly, defiance flashing in her eyes. I know exactly where I am. Max nodded slowly. I believe you, but most kids don't choose to spend the night under a bridge. Emma's gaze drifted toward the road above them. This place is important. Important how? She hesitated, clearly wrestling with how much to reveal. Max waited patiently, sensing that pushing too hard would only make her close up again. I come here every year, she finally said, her voice so quiet he had to lean forward to hear her. Same day, same time. Max's brow furrowed. Like some kind of ritual. Emma shrugged, but her casual gesture couldn't hide the emotion tightening her features. Call it whatever you want. And today's the day, Max said, understanding dawning. That's why you won't leave. You're waiting for something. Not something, Emma corrected, clutching the school bag closer. It's not like that. The flashlight flickered, throwing strange shadows across their faces. In the unsteady light, Emma looked older somehow, a child bearing an adult's burden. I'm not a runaway, she insisted. I'm not in trouble. I just need to be here tonight. Max considered her words. There was clearly more to the story, much more, but the girl had already shared more than he expected. He'd spent enough years building walls to recognize when someone else was doing the same. All right, he said simply. Emma looked up, surprise evident on her face. All right? Yeah, you're here for a reason. I respect that. He adjusted his position, stretching his legs out in front of him. But I'm staying too, at least until morning. You don't have to, Emma said, though Max noticed she didn't sound entirely displeased. I know, but like I said before, this isn't a place for kids alone at night. Emma studied him for a long moment, as if trying to decode some hidden motive in his words. Finally, she gave a small nod. I'm not lost, she repeated firmly. I know exactly why I'm here. The silence between them settled like dust, comfortable in its own strange way. Emma's fingers remained curled around the worn school bag, her knuckles white with tension. The flashlight between them cast long shadows across the concrete, their faces illuminated in the soft glow. Max watched as Emma seemed to be having an internal debate. Her eyes darted occasionally to his face, then back to the bag in her lap, as if measuring how much she could trust him. You said you share things with strangers, she finally said, her voice small against the occasional rush of cars passing overhead. Sometimes it's easier that way, Max agreed. He kept his posture relaxed, afraid any sudden movement might spook her back into silence. Emma nodded slowly. I have something to show you, but it's private. I understand private, Max said gently. Been keeping my own secrets for years. The girl's fingers moved to the safety pin, holding the broken zipper together. She carefully unfastened it and pulled the zipper open with a practiced motion that suggested she'd done this many times before. The bag's mouth gaped open, and Emma hesitated one final moment before reaching inside. First, she pulled out a small teddy bear. It was well worn, missing one eye, its brown fur matted from years of handling. The bear had clearly been loved hard, the kind of love only children can give to their special things. She placed it carefully on the ground between them. This was Jimmy's, she said simply. Max nodded but didn't speak, sensing there was more to come. Next came a bundle of papers, held together with a rubber band that had gone brittle with age. Emma handled these with extreme care, as if they were made of glass. She didn't open them but placed them beside the teddy bear. "I write to him," she explained, her voice catching slightly. "Every month, sometimes more." The flashlight flickered, and Max tapped it gently against his palm until the beam stabilized again. In that brief moment of darkness, he thought he saw tears glistening in Emma's eyes. Her small hand disappeared into the bag once more and emerged with a collection of colorful drawings, the kind done by a child's hand, full of bright colors and wobbly lines. She arranged these carefully beside the other items. "I draw things I think he'd like to see. Things he's missing." Max's throat tightened. The pieces were starting to fit together, forming a picture he wasn't sure he wanted to see clearly. "Jimmy," he said carefully. "He was your brother?" Emma nodded, running her finger along the edge of one drawing, a lopsided house with 4 stick figures standing outside it. "My big brother. He was 12 when—" She stopped abruptly, swallowing hard. Max waited, giving her the space to continue at her own pace. "When it happened," she finished finally. The underpass suddenly felt colder. Max pulled his jacket tighter around himself, feeling a chill that had nothing to do with the night air. "This spot," he said, the realization dawning. "This is where—" "Yes," Emma interrupted, not wanting to hear him say it. "Right here, 3 years ago today." She reached into the bag one final time and pulled out a small, framed photograph protected in a plastic sandwich bag. In it, a smiling boy with sandy hair had his arms slung around a younger Emma's shoulders. Both children were grinning widely at the camera, their resemblance unmistakable. "It was raining," Emma continued, her voice taking on a distant quality. "Mom was late picking us up from school. Jimmy said we should take the shortcut under the bridge instead of waiting." She placed the photograph carefully beside the other treasures. "He was always looking out for me." Max's eyes traveled from the items spread between them to the concrete where they sat. This wasn't just any underpass. This was a memorial site, a place of profound loss for the small girl before him. "Every year I come back," Emma explained, her voice stronger now. "I bring his bear, my letters, my drawings. I spend the night telling him about everything he's missed." She looked up at Max, her eyes filled with a mixture of grief and determination. "Nobody knows I do this. Not Mom, not Grandma. They wouldn't understand." "Your brother," Max said softly. "He died right here." Emma nodded, her fingers gently straightening the teddy bear's remaining ear. "Hit and run," she said, the words falling between them like stones. "The driver never stopped. Never even slowed down." Max felt his body go rigid, as if all his muscles had turned to stone. The night air suddenly seemed thinner, harder to breathe. The items from Emma's school bag lay between them like evidence at a crime scene, fragile fragments of a life cut short. "Do you want to tell me what happened?" Max asked, his voice rougher than he intended. He cleared his throat. "Only if you want to." Emma's fingers gently stroked the teddy bear's worn fur. For a moment, she seemed lost in memory, her eyes focused on something far away. "It was October 17th, she began. "A Thursday. It had been raining all day." Max nodded, encouraging her to continue, even as an uncomfortable feeling began to spread through his chest. "Jimmy and I were waiting after school. Mom was supposed to pick us up, but she texted saying she'd be late because of traffic." Emma's voice grew steadier as she spoke, as if she'd told this story many times, perhaps only to herself. "Jimmy said we should take the shortcut home, the one that goes under this bridge." A car rumbled overhead, and both of them glanced up at the sound before Emma continued. I remember the puddles were really big. Jimmy was jumping in them, making me laugh. A small smile touched her lips before fading. I was wearing my yellow raincoat. Jimmy said I looked like a little duck. Max's hands had begun to tremble slightly. He slid them under his thighs, pressing them against the cold concrete. We were right here, Emma said, pointing to a spot several feet away. Jimmy was walking on the outside, closest to the road. He always did that. Said it was safer for me to walk on the inside. October 17th. 3 years ago. Rain. The date hammered in Max's mind like a persistent headache. Something about it felt sickeningly familiar. There was this big truck parked there, Emma continued, pointing to the shoulder of the road. We couldn't see around it very well. Jimmy took my hand and said we'd cross quick, like we were spies on a mission. Max's mouth had gone dry. He reached for his water bottle but found it empty. We started crossing, and that's when we heard it, Emma said. A motorcycle going really fast. Too fast for the rain. She hugged herself, the memory clearly painful. Jimmy pushed me back, hard. I fell into a puddle, but I was safe on the edge. The world around Max began to blur at the edges. A motorcycle. Rain. October 17th. An underpass. The pieces were falling together in the worst possible way. The motorcycle came around the truck so fast, Emma continued. The headlight was so bright in the rain. Jimmy didn't have time to move. Her voice wavered. I heard a sound, a really bad sound. Then the motorcycle kept going, never even slowed down. Max could barely breathe now. His heart pounded against his ribs like it was trying to escape. I remember the motorcycle was black, big, loud, Emma said. The police asked me so many questions, but it was dark and rainy. I couldn't see the person driving it. Max remembered. He remembered all of it now. The rain beating against his helmet. The truck suddenly appearing, swerving around it too fast. A flash of yellow, a child's raincoat. A boy pushing the smaller child away. The impact. And then, God help him, he had kept going. Panic and fear and too much whiskey in his system. He'd ridden for miles, his mind screaming before he finally stopped at a motel and realized what he'd done. Jimmy died right here, Emma said, touching the concrete. The ambulance came, but it was too late. Max felt sweat breaking out across his forehead, despite the cool night air. The teddy bear with its one eye seemed to stare accusingly at him. 3 years of anonymous flowers left at this spot. 3 years of nightmares. 3 years of looking over his shoulder, waiting for justice to catch up. And now it had, in the form of a 9-year-old girl with her brother's teddy bear. Are you okay? Emma asked, noticing the change in him. You look sick. Just, Max struggled to form words. It's a hard story to hear. But it wasn't just hearing it. It was remembering it, from the other side, from behind the handlebars of a motorcycle exactly like the one parked yards away. Black. Big. Loud. The very same motorcycle that had struck her brother down and never stopped. The full weight of night had settled around them now. Beneath the bridge, shadows stretched like dark fingers across the concrete. Traffic continued overhead, each passing car creating a momentary rush of sound before fading into the distance. Max sat perfectly still, his body rigid with shock, his face carefully composed despite the storm raging inside him. Emma had fallen quiet after sharing her story. She arranged her brother's things in a small semicircle, the teddy bear watching over the drawings and letters like a sentinel. The soft glow from a distant streetlight caught the moisture in her eyes. Your brother sounds like he was very brave, Max finally said, the words nearly choking him. His hands felt cold, clammy. He clasped them together to stop them from shaking. He was the bravest, Emma replied, her small fingers straightening one of the letters. He always looked out for me. Max nodded, unable to trust his voice. The roar of a passing truck overhead gave him a moment to collect himself. He had come to this place countless times over the past 3 years, leaving flowers, seeking some form of redemption that never came. And now, by some cruel twist of fate, he sat beside the sister of the boy whose life he had taken. "Do you want to see his picture?" Emma asked. Before Max could answer, she pulled a small, laminated photograph from her bag. She held it out, and Max had no choice but to take it, his fingers trembling slightly. The boy in the photo had a wide, gap-toothed smile and eyes full of mischief. Dark hair fell across his forehead. He was holding a basketball, looking proud and alive and full of possibilities. "That was his last school picture," Emma explained. "He was 11. Max stared at the face he had never seen clearly that rainy night, the face that haunted his dreams without form or feature. Now it had eyes, a smile, a name. Jimmy. "He looks like a good kid," Max managed, handing the photo back. His chest felt so tight he could barely breathe. He was. The best brother. Emma carefully returned the photo to her bag. "The person who hit him never stopped, never said sorry, just left him there." Each word felt like a knife twisting in Max's gut. He swallowed hard, tasting bile. 3 years of running, and he couldn't run anymore. Not with Jimmy's sister sitting right beside him. Not with the evidence of his cowardice spread out on the concrete between them. "That's why I come here," Emma continued, her voice small but steady. "I want him to know somebody remembers, that somebody still cares." Max looked at her, this child keeping a lonely vigil for her brother, year after year, and felt something inside him break. The shame was crushing, suffocating. "What would you say," he began carefully, his voice rough with emotion, "if that person who hit your brother ever came back, if they ever found you?" Emma considered this, her young face solemn in the dim light. "I'd want to know why they didn't stop, why they left him all alone." Max looked away, unable to meet her eyes. A car honked somewhere in the distance. The night air had grown colder, and he noticed Emma shiver slightly. "Here," he said, removing his leather jacket and draping it around her shoulders. It swallowed her small frame. "It's getting cold." "Thank you," she said, pulling it tighter around herself. "My mom will be worried, but I can't leave yet. I always stay until midnight. That's when it happened." Max checked his watch. It was only 9:30. The thought of leaving her here alone, in the dark, was unthinkable. But staying meant hours more of sitting with his secret, with Jimmy's picture burned into his memory and Jimmy's sister wrapped in his jacket. "It's not safe for you to be out here alone," Max said quietly. "What if I stay with you? Until midnight. Then I could make sure you get home safe." Emma studied him with eyes too wise for her years. "You would do that? For a stranger?" The question pierced him like a physical pain. He wasn't a stranger. He was connected to her in the worst possible way. He was the reason she sat here in the darkness year after year. "Yes," Max said firmly, making his decision. "I'll stay as long as you need." He couldn't leave her. Not now. Not ever again. The minutes stretched into hours as they sat beneath the bridge. Traffic thinned overhead, leaving longer stretches of silence between the passing cars. Max's jacket remained wrapped around Emma's small shoulders, and she seemed to draw strength from its warmth. "Jimmy used to make me laugh all the time," Emma said suddenly, breaking a long silence. She picked up the teddy bear, adjusting its worn bow tie. "Even when I was sad or scared, he knew how to make everything better." Max shifted his weight, settling in to listen. "What kind of things did he do?" A small smile touched Emma's lips. He could do this thing where he'd flip his eyelids inside out to scare me. It was so gross. She giggled softly at the memory. And when I had nightmares, he'd make shadow puppets on the wall until I fell back asleep. Max nodded, picturing the boy from the photograph making his sister laugh. The knot in his stomach tightened. Jimmy was really good at basketball too, Emma continued, pointing to one of the drawings spread out before them. It showed a stick figure boy with a ball, standing near a hoop that towered above him. Coach said he had natural talent. Jimmy practiced every day after school. He wanted to be just like LeBron James. Max leaned forward to look at the drawing. The stick figure wore a wide smile, arms raised in victory. He sounds special, Max said softly. He was going to be famous someday, Emma said with absolute certainty. That's what Mom always told him. He had big dreams. Max's throat constricted. Dreams that would never come true because of him. Emma picked up one of the folded papers. This is the last story he wrote for school. His teacher gave it to us after... Her voice trailed off. It's about a superhero who could fly and turn invisible. The superhero always saved people just in time. Just in time. The phrase echoed in Max's head. He hadn't saved Jimmy. He hadn't even stopped. Would you like to read it? Emma held out the paper. Max hesitated before carefully taking it. The pages were covered in a child's handwriting, large, uneven letters that sloped across ruled lines. The paper had been folded and unfolded so many times that it was soft, the creases permanent. The Invisible Hero, Max read aloud, his voice barely above a whisper. By Jimmy Torres, age 11. He read the short story slowly, taking in every word about a regular kid who discovered he had powers and used them to protect people who couldn't protect themselves. The hero never revealed his identity. He just wanted to help. When Max finished reading, he carefully refolded the paper along its worn creases. He was a good writer. The best, Emma agreed. Mom keeps all his stories in a special box. This one's my favorite, though. I bring it every year. She reached for another item, a small notebook with a faded cover. This is where Jimmy wrote down all the things he wanted to do when he grew up. He called it his someday list. She opened it to a dog-eared page. See? He wanted to play basketball for the Lakers and visit the Grand Canyon and learn to surf. Max looked at the list, each item written in the same childish scrawl, each one representing a future that would never happen. His chest ached as if someone had reached inside and squeezed his heart. He was saving up money to buy Mom a real diamond ring, Emma continued. She never had an engagement ring, and he was teaching me to ride a bike without training wheels. She fell silent for a moment, lost in memories. Jimmy shared his lunch with kids who forgot theirs, she said finally. And he never told on me when I broke Mom's favorite mug. He said that's what brothers do. They look out for their sisters. Max watched her trace her finger over her brother's handwriting. Jimmy wasn't just a name anymore, or a faceless victim. He was a boy who made shadow puppets and played basketball. A boy with dreams and stories. A boy who protected his little sister. A boy Max had left alone on a rainy night. Each detail Emma shared cut deeper than the last. Max felt the full weight of what he had taken from the world. Not just a life, but laughter, kindness, and possibility. Max sat quietly for a while, Emma's stories about Jimmy settling around him like fallen leaves. The weight of what he'd done pressed down on him harder than ever. But something else stirred inside him too, a need to give something back to this child who had shared so much. I had a daughter once, Max said, his voice rough. Her name is Lily. Emma looked up, surprised by this offering. Is she grown up now? Max nodded, his eyes fixed on the concrete beneath them. She'd be about 30 now, but I haven't seen her since she was around your age." "Why not?" Emma asked, pulling his jacket tighter around her shoulders. Max took a deep breath. This wasn't a story he told often. Or ever, really. But sitting here with Emma, beneath the weight of shared loss, the words found their way out. "I wasn't the father she deserved," he admitted. "I was young and stupid, made all the wrong choices. I thought riding with the club was more important than anything else." He gestured vaguely to the patches on his leather vest. "I missed her school plays, forgot her birthdays, was never there when she needed me." Max's voice grew softer. "Her mom finally had enough. Took Lily and moved 3 states away." Emma studied him with serious eyes. "Did you try to find them?" "By the time I realized what I'd lost, it was too late. Her mom remarried. Good guy, steady job, the kind of father Lily needed." Max's weathered face tightened. "I told myself it was better for Lily if I stayed away." "Do you have a picture?" Emma asked. Max hesitated, then reached for his wallet. From behind his driver's license, he pulled out a worn photograph. A young girl with sandy blonde hair and a gap-toothed smile sitting on a park swing. "This is the last picture I have of her. She was 8. He handed it to Emma, who studied it carefully. "She looks happy," Emma said. Max nodded. "She was. At least when I wasn't messing things up." He took the photo back, looking at it for a long moment before returning it to his wallet. "I sent birthday cards for a while, Christmas presents too. Never got anything back." He shrugged, trying to make it seem like it didn't matter, but the pain was clear in his eyes. "Eventually I stopped trying." "That's sad," Emma said simply. "Yeah," Max agreed. "But it was my fault. I made choices I can't take back." The traffic above had dwindled to occasional cars, their headlights briefly illuminating the underside of the bridge before disappearing again. "After Lily was gone, I got worse for a while. Drank too much, rode too fast." Max's voice dropped. "Did things I'm not proud of." He glanced at Emma, wondering if he was saying too much, but her face showed only quiet attention. "About 5 years ago, I finally woke up. Realized I was just wasting whatever life I had left." He gestured to the small space around them. "Started trying to straighten myself out. Too late for Lily, but maybe not too late for me." Emma nodded as if she understood. Though how could she? Yet there was something in her eyes, a kind of old wisdom that children who've faced loss sometimes carry. "Jimmy always said everyone deserves a second chance," she said quietly. The words hit Max like a physical blow. He didn't deserve a second chance. Not after what he'd done, but he couldn't tell her that. Not yet. "Your brother sounds like he was pretty smart," Max managed to say. "He was the smartest person I knew," Emma agreed. She picked up the teddy bear again, adjusting its bow tie. "Mom says I'm a lot like him sometimes." They sat in silence for a moment, each lost in memories of the people they'd lost, one through death, one through distance and regret. "Do you think Lily ever looks at old pictures of you?" Emma asked suddenly. The question caught Max off guard. "I don't know," he said honestly. "I hope she remembers something good." "I bet she does," Emma said with surprising certainty. "That's what memories are for, to keep the good parts safe." Max felt something shift inside him, a tiny crack in the wall he'd built around his heart. This child who had every reason to be bitter was instead offering comfort. "Maybe you're right," he said softly. Night had fully claimed the underpass. The occasional swoosh of cars passing overhead punctuated the silence, their headlights casting fleeting shadows across the concrete walls. Max sat with his back against the pillar, watching Emma as she carefully arranged her brother's belongings in a small semicircle. The teddy bear sat propped up against her school bag, looking out at them with button eyes that seemed to hold questions. "You should try to sleep a little," Max said, his voice low and rough. Emma shook her head. "I don't sleep much on Jimmy's night." She pulled her knees to her chest. "It doesn't feel right." Max nodded, understanding. He hadn't slept well on this date for years either, though he'd never known why the nightmares always seemed worse. Now he knew. His body had remembered what his mind tried to forget. The weight of his secret pressed down on him like a physical thing. Each time Emma mentioned her brother, each story she shared twisted the knife deeper. He wasn't just sitting with a grieving child. He was sitting with the sister of the boy he'd killed and left to die alone. "You okay?" Emma asked, catching his troubled expression. Max forced a nod. "Just thinking." "About your daughter?" "Yeah," he lied. "About Lily." But his thoughts were a storm. The faces of Jimmy and Lily blurred together in his mind. Two children he'd failed in different ways. One through absence, one through something far worse. Emma yawned, despite her determination to stay awake. She leaned back against her schoolbag, her eyelids growing heavy. Max watched her fighting sleep, this brave little girl who came to honor her brother year after year. The thought of her discovering who he really was made his stomach churn. Would she run? Scream? Would she look at him with the same hatred he felt for himself? He should leave now, he thought. Walk away before she knew. But leaving her alone under this bridge in the middle of the night wasn't an option. And deeper than that, something held him here. A sense that this moment, however painful, was important. The traffic above had dwindled to nothing. In the stillness, Max could hear Emma's breathing growing deeper as exhaustion finally claimed her. Her small form curled slightly, her hand still clutching one of Jimmy's drawings. Max carefully removed his leather jacket and gently placed it over her. She didn't stir. Alone with his thoughts, Max stared out at the empty road stretching away from the underpass. The same road he'd sped down that night, panicked and drunk, the sound of impact still echoing in his ears. He remembered looking back once in his mirror, seeing something on the road, and then pushing his motorcycle faster, desperate to escape. He'd told himself for years that he couldn't have been sure it was a person, that maybe it had been an animal or debris in the road. But he'd known. Deep down, he'd always known. And now, by some twisted fate, the universe had brought him face to face with the aftermath of what he'd done. Not in a courtroom or a prison cell, but sitting beside a child who'd lost her world because of him. He had to tell her the truth. The realization settled over him with terrible clarity. Not because confessing would ease his conscience. Nothing could do that now. But because she deserved to know, because lying to her was another form of cowardice. But how? How did you tell a child you were the monster in her nightmares? Max rubbed his face with calloused hands. Maybe in the morning. Maybe when she woke up. He would find the words somehow, though they would be the hardest he'd ever spoken. He looked over at Emma's sleeping form, at the small shrine she'd created for her brother. Tomorrow she would know. Tomorrow this fragile connection they'd formed would shatter. She would look at him with different eyes, eyes that saw him for what he truly was. Fear gripped him at the thought, but his decision was made. Before they left this place, before the sun rose, he would tell her the truth. He owed her that much, at least. Emma woke with a start, disoriented by the unfamiliar weight of the leather jacket covering her. For a moment, she'd forgotten where she was. The dark shape of the bridge loomed above, and the memory rushed back. Jimmy's special place. Jimmy's day. She sat up, clutching the jacket around her shoulders against the night chill. The big man, Max, sat a few feet away, his back against the concrete pillar, eyes open and watchful. "What time is it?" she asked, her voice small in the vast darkness. Max checked his watch. "Just past midnight." Emma nodded solemnly. "It's officially the day, then." "The day?" "When it happened." She pulled the jacket tighter. 3 years ago today." Max swallowed hard, his face half hidden in shadow. "I'm sorry." A car passed overhead, its engine growling in the night. Emma watched the lights slide across the concrete. "Max?" she asked after a while. "Yeah?" "Do you think he can see me? Jimmy, I mean." Her voice was small but direct, the kind of straightforward question only children seemed brave enough to ask. Max shifted uncomfortably. He wasn't used to these kinds of conversations. Most people in his life avoided talking about anything deeper than motorcycle parts or the weather. But something about Emma's earnest eyes made him want to try. "I don't know for sure," he said slowly, "but I like to think so. Mom says he's watching over me, but sometimes I worry he might be lonely." Max felt his throat tighten. "I don't think he is. Not with you remembering him like this." Emma considered this, her fingers tracing the worn ear of the teddy bear beside her. "Jimmy always looked out for me, even when the other kids picked on him for walking me to school." She looked up at Max. "Do you think that's what big brothers are supposed to do?" The innocence of her question pierced his heart. "Yeah, that's exactly what they're supposed to do." "He wanted to be a firefighter," Emma continued. "He said he wanted to save people." Max closed his eyes briefly, fighting back the wave of shame that crashed over him. "That's a good thing to want to be," he managed. Emma nodded. "What did your daughter want to be?" The question caught him off guard. "Lily? She wanted to be a veterinarian. She loved animals. Had this little notebook where she'd draw pictures of all the pets she was going to help someday." "Do you still have it? The notebook?" "Yeah," Max said softly. "I keep it in my saddlebag. Take it everywhere." Emma seemed satisfied with this answer. She pulled out one of Jimmy's drawings from her school bag and smoothed it carefully on her lap. "Max?" she asked again. "Yeah? When bad things happen, do they ever stop hurting?" The question hung in the air between them. Max considered lying, giving her the easy comfort of a simple yes, but something told him she deserved better than that. "Not completely," he said finally, "but it changes, gets different. Some days it hurts less than others." Emma nodded thoughtfully. "That's what I thought." "But you know what helps?" Max added. "What?" "Having good people around you, people who care." He hesitated. "And remembering the good stuff, like you're doing for your brother." Emma looked down at the drawing in her lap, a colorful sketch of what appeared to be herself and Jimmy holding hands. "I get scared I'll forget things about him," she admitted, like the sound of his laugh or how he'd always save the red gummy bears for me because they were my favorite. "You won't forget," Max assured her. "Not the important things." "Promise?" "Promise." Emma was quiet for a moment, considering his words. Then she reached over and picked up the teddy bear, adjusting its little denim vest. "Jimmy would have liked you," she said simply. The words hit Max like a physical blow. He struggled to maintain his composure, knowing he didn't deserve such a statement. "You think so?" he asked, his voice hardly more than a whisper. "Yeah. You're nice even though you look scary," Emma said with childish honesty. "And you listen good." For the first time since she'd met him, Emma smiled, a small tentative curve of her lips that transformed her solemn face. The sight of it created a warmth in Max's chest, a feeling so unexpected it momentarily pushed back the crushing weight of his guilt. He returned her smile cautiously, this brief connection between them suddenly precious and fragile. The midnight air had grown colder, wrapping around Emma and Max like a thin blanket. Traffic had slowed to occasional passing cars, their headlights briefly illuminating the underside of the bridge before disappearing into the darkness again. Emma stirred from her spot, suddenly animated with purpose. She checked her watch, a child's watch with cartoon characters on its face, and nodded to herself. "It's time," she said softly. Max watched as she reached for her school bag. With careful, practiced movements, she began taking out her treasures one by one. There was a system to it, he realized, a ritual she had clearly performed before. First came the teddy bear, which she placed in the center of a small, cleared space. Next, she arranged the drawings in a semicircle around it, using small rocks to keep them from blowing away. The letters, folded neatly, were placed beneath the bear's paws. "Jimmy liked things to be neat," she explained without looking up. "He always made his bed really straight. Mom said he was the only kid she knew who did that without being asked." Max nodded, his throat tight. He stayed where he was, afraid to intrude on this sacred space she was creating. Emma reached deeper into the bag and pulled out a small battery-operated lantern. When she switched it on, a warm glow spread around them, pushing back the darkness. In the soft light, Max could see her face more clearly, serious and intent, yet peaceful somehow. "Last year it was too windy for candles," she said, "so I got this instead." She placed the lantern behind the teddy bear, creating a halo effect around the makeshift shrine. Then she pulled out a small packet of red gummy bears. "These were his favorite," she said, opening the package and placing 3 of them in front of the bear. "But he always gave me the red ones because he knew I liked them best." Max watched, barely breathing. The simple act of sharing was somehow more heartbreaking than any display of grief. Next came a small notebook with a blue cover. Emma opened it carefully to a marked page. "This was his journal. Mom doesn't know I took it," she admitted. "But I think Jimmy would want me to have it." She turned the book so the pages faced the teddy bear, as if the stuffed animal was reading it. Max noticed her hands trembling slightly as she arranged and rearranged the items, getting them precisely how she wanted them. When she dropped one of the small rocks, it rolled toward Max's boot. Without thinking, he picked it up and held it out to her. "Thank you," Emma said, taking it from his large, rough hand. Something in her quiet dignity broke through his hesitation. Would it be okay if I helped?" he asked tentatively. Emma studied him for a long moment, then nodded. Max moved closer, kneeling beside her small collection. "What else do you have in there?" he asked, gesturing to the school bag. "A few more things," she said. She pulled out a small action figure, a firefighter, naturally, and handed it to Max. "You can put this next to him." Max took the plastic figure with the gentleness one might handle a priceless artifact. With surprising care for his large fingers, he placed it standing beside the teddy bear. "Like that?" "Yes," Emma nodded. "That's good." Next came a school photo, a smiling boy with the same deep brown eyes as Emma. Max felt his chest constrict as he looked at the face of the child whose life he had taken. The boy's smile was bright and open, full of the confidence that comes before the world teaches you to be cautious. Emma handed Max a small, smooth stone painted with blue and green swirls. "Jimmy made this in art class," she said. "You can put it right in front." Max's hand shook as he placed the stone. The painting was clearly a child's work, but done with care. He wondered how many other art projects Jimmy would have created if he'd had the chance. "It looks nice," Max said, his voice barely audible. "We do this every year," Emma explained. Just me, usually. Mom used to come, but it made her cry too much. It's a beautiful way to remember him, Max said, feeling the inadequacy of his words. They sat together in silence after completing the memorial. The small collection of items glowed softly in the lantern light. The teddy bear, the drawings, the painted stone, all carefully arranged in a circle of remembrance. The underside of the bridge felt different now, transformed from a cold concrete shelter into something almost sacred. Emma hugged her knees to her chest, her eyes fixed on the teddy bear. Max sat nearby, his large frame somehow smaller now, hunched with the weight of what he knew. Jimmy would have been 16 next month, Emma said, breaking the long silence. Her voice was quiet but steady, practiced in the art of speaking about her brother in the past tense. Mom says he would have started driving by now. Probably would have driven me to school. Max nodded, unable to find words. The traffic above had slowed to occasional rumbles. A midnight train whistled in the distance, its lonely sound echoing through the night. Do you think... Emma started, then stopped. She picked at a loose thread on her jeans. Do you think people who die know when we remember them? Max looked up at the concrete ceiling of their shelter, considering her question with the seriousness it deserved. I think they do, he said finally. Not in the way we understand, maybe, but somehow they know. Emma nodded, seemingly satisfied with his answer. That's what I think too. Another silence fell between them, but it was different now. Less awkward, more companionable. The lantern flickered slightly as a breeze swept through their small space. My grandma used to say that love doesn't stop just because someone's gone, Max offered. It just changes into something you carry instead of something you share. That's nice, Emma said. Your grandma sounds smart. She was, Max smiled faintly. Toughest woman I ever knew. Raised me after my mom left. Emma readjusted the teddy bear's position slightly. Jimmy would have liked you, I think. He always said you could tell good people by how they treat kids and animals. The words pierced Max like physical pain. He didn't deserve to be thought of as good, especially not by the sister of the boy whose life he had taken. His hands, resting on his knees, clenched into fists, then slowly released. I'm not so sure about that, he said quietly. Emma looked at him curiously. Why not? Done some things I'm not proud of, Max replied, staring at the ground. Made mistakes that can't be fixed. Like with your daughter? Emma asked. That and other things. Max swallowed hard, the confession building inside him like pressure in a sealed container. Things worse than that. Emma considered this. My teacher says everybody makes mistakes. It's what you do after that counts. Max looked at her, this child with her simple wisdom that cut straight through his defenses. In that moment, she reminded him so much of his own daughter at that age, straightforward, honest, untainted by the complications adults wrapped around simple truths. The memorial between them seemed to demand honesty. The smiling photo of Jimmy, the carefully arranged treasures, they were testaments to truth and remembrance. Max felt the weight of his secret pressing down on him, making it hard to breathe. Emma, he began, his voice rougher than usual. There's something I need to... A truck rumbled overhead, momentarily drowning out his words. When the noise faded, Emma was looking at him expectantly. Max took a deep breath. The time for hiding was over. He had carried this secret for years, letting it poison everything he touched. Looking at Emma's face in the gentle lantern light, he knew he couldn't carry it any longer. His heart hammered in his chest. Once he spoke these words, there would be no taking them back. She might run, she might scream, she might hate him forever, and she would have every right to. But the truth demanded to be spoken, here in this place, before these memorials to a life cut short. Max straightened his shoulders and met Emma's eyes. It was time. Max took a deep breath, the weight of his confession heavy on his tongue. The words he had buried for years were finally rising to the surface, demanding to be spoken. His hands trembled slightly as he gathered his courage. "Emma, there's something I need to tell you about your brother," he began, his voice low and unsteady. But before he could continue, Emma reached into her school bag again. Her small fingers dug past the teddy bear and drawings to the very bottom of the bag. She pulled out something Max hadn't noticed earlier, a folded, yellowed piece of newspaper, worn at the creases from being opened and closed many times. "Wait," she said quietly. "I want to show you something first." Max fell silent, watching as she carefully unfolded the clipping. The paper crackled softly in the quiet night. She smoothed it against her knee with practiced care, treating it as gently as everything else in her memorial collection. The lantern light flickered across the faded newsprint, illuminating a headline that made Max's blood run cold. "Local boy killed in hit and run, driver still at large." Below the headline was a grainy photo of the accident scene, this very spot under the bridge. Police tape, emergency vehicles, a small dark shape on the ground that the photographer had mercifully captured from a distance. Max couldn't breathe. His past stared back at him from that brittle piece of paper, the moment that had divided his life into before and after. "I bring this every year too," Emma said, her voice steady. "Mom doesn't know I have it. She put away all the newspaper stories after the funeral, but I found this one and kept it." Max tried to speak, but no words came. His throat felt as though it were closing. Emma ran her finger along the edge of the paper, not looking at him. "They never found the person who did it. At least, that's what the police told us." The air between them seemed to thicken. Traffic sounds faded away, until all Max could hear was his own heartbeat thundering in his ears. He watched, paralyzed, as Emma turned the newspaper over. On the back, she had taped another, smaller clipping, a blurry security camera image from a gas station half a mile from the accident site. It showed a motorcycle and a rider in a leather jacket. The image was grainy and dark, captured at night, but to someone looking for it, someone who had studied it for years, the details would be clear enough. "This is from the gas station camera," Emma explained. "The police showed it to my mom once. They said it might be the person, but they couldn't see the license plate clear enough." Max stared at the image, at himself from 7 years ago, fleeing the worst mistake of his life. His heart pounded so hard he was sure Emma could hear it. She looked up from the newspaper and directly into his eyes. The lantern cast half her face in light, half in shadow. She didn't look angry or frightened. Instead, her expression held something far more devastating, a quiet certainty. "The police couldn't tell who it was," she said softly. "But I've looked at this picture hundreds of times. I know all the details now. The motorcycle type, the helmet, the jacket." She paused, her eyes never leaving his. "The tattoo on the right hand." Max instinctively covered his right hand with his left, hiding the faded skull tattoo on his knuckles, the same one visible in the security camera image. "I already know who you are," Emma said simply. The words hung in the space between them, clear and undeniable. No anger, no accusation, just the plain truth spoken by a child who had carried this knowledge alongside her grief. Max sat absolutely still, stunned into silence. All his prepared confessions, all his imagined scenarios of how this moment might go, none of them had prepared him for this. She had known all along. From the moment she first saw him approach her school bag, she had recognized him. "You knew," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "This whole time." Emma nodded, holding his gaze steadily across the small memorial she had built for her brother. Max felt as though the ground had opened beneath him. His fingers trembled against his weathered jeans as the truth hung between them, no longer his secret to keep. "How long?" he asked, his voice cracking. "How long have you known it was me?" "Since you walked up," Emma replied softly. "I saw your motorcycle first, then your jacket, then your hands." She glanced at his tattoo again. "I've been waiting for years to see if you'd ever come back." Max's chest tightened with each breath. The wall he had built around this memory, the drinking, the running, the countless miles on open roads trying to escape what he'd done, all came crashing down in an instant. "I never meant for it to happen," he began, the words spilling out in a rush. "That night, I'd been drinking. Not enough to think I couldn't ride, but enough that I shouldn't have been on that bike at all." Emma watched him steadily, her young face showing a maturity far beyond her years. "It was raining. Just a light drizzle, but enough to make the road slick." Max swallowed hard. "I was going too fast, way too fast under that bridge, and then suddenly..." His voice caught. "There was someone there. A boy. Your brother." He closed his eyes, the memory playing with terrible clarity. "I swerved, but it was too late. I felt the impact. I heard..." He couldn't finish the sentence. "I stopped. I did stop. About 50 yards up. I looked back and saw him lying there." A tear rolled down Max's weathered cheek. He made no move to wipe it away. "I should have gone back. I should have called for help. But I was scared. I had priors. I'd been drinking. I thought I'd go to prison for sure." His voice dropped to a whisper. "So I left him there. I just left him there." The admission hung in the air, heavy and terrible. Traffic continued to pass overhead, oblivious to the confession unfolding below. "Not a single day has gone by that I haven't thought about what I did," Max continued, unable to meet her gaze now. "I stopped drinking after that night. Couldn't touch the stuff anymore. Started riding different routes, staying away from this town, but I couldn't outrun it." Emma remained silent, her small hands folded in her lap. "I lost my own daughter because of who I was back then, the kind of man who could leave a dying child alone on the road." His voice shook. When she found out what kind of person her father really was, she wanted nothing to do with me. Can't say I blame her. Max looked up at the concrete ceiling of the overpass, tears flowing freely now. "I came back here every year on this date. Never had the courage to stop, though. Just rode by, punishing myself with the memory. But today..." He looked at Emma. "Today I saw your school bag, and then I saw you." His large hands clenched and unclenched helplessly. "I didn't know it was you, who you were. I just thought you were a kid who needed help. But maybe deep down, I was finally ready to face what I'd done." The dam had broken now. 7 years of guilt poured out of him, his shoulders shaking with sobs he could no longer contain. He pressed his palms against his eyes, decades of hardened biker persona crumbling away to reveal the broken man underneath. "I killed your brother," he said, the words tearing from his throat. "And I've been dying inside ever since. There's nothing I can say to make it right. Nothing I can ever do to fix it." Max finally looked directly at Emma, expecting to see hatred or fear in her eyes. He would have welcomed her anger, would have accepted any punishment she wished to inflict. But Emma just watched him, her expression calm and unreadable in the lantern light. Her silence was more devastating than any scream could have been. She neither comforted nor condemned him. She simply witnessed his confession, absorbing every word without reaction. Max broke completely under that steady gaze. He doubled over, his large frame racked with sobs. The tough exterior he had maintained for a lifetime dissolved entirely as he wept. For her brother, for his daughter, for all the years wasted running from what he had done. Emma remained silent, watching the man who had changed her life forever finally face the truth they both had carried. The sounds of the night surrounded them. Distant traffic, the rustle of wind through the concrete pillars, the occasional hoot of an owl. But between Max and Emma, there was only silence. His confession hung in the air like a physical thing, heavy and raw. Max's breathing slowly steadied. His large, calloused hands wiped roughly at his face, smearing away tears that had carved paths through the dust of the road. He couldn't look at her now. The shame was too much to bear. Emma sat with her knees pulled to her chest, her small fingers tracing the worn edge of the newspaper clipping. Her face remained calm, almost unnaturally so for a child her age. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet but clear. "I used to imagine what you looked like," she said. "After it happened, I'd lie in bed at night and try to picture your face." Max flinched at her words but forced himself to meet her gaze. "In my head, you were a monster," she continued. "Someone evil. Someone who laughed about what happened. Someone who didn't care at all." She folded the clipping carefully and placed it back in her school bag. The teddy bear peeked out from inside, its button eyes reflecting the dim light. "My mom got really angry after Tyler died. She would scream about finding you someday, about making you pay." Emma's voice remained steady, matter of fact. "But my grandma, she was different. She told me that hating you would only hurt me more." Max listened, every word cutting deeper than any knife could reach. "Last year Grandma found this," Emma said, patting the newspaper. "She didn't show Mom. She just showed me. She said if I ever saw you, I should decide for myself what to do." The night air felt cold against Max's tear-stained face. "And what did you decide?" he asked, his voice barely audible. Emma looked up at the underside of the bridge, her eyes tracing the concrete patterns above them. "I didn't know. Not until I saw you today." She shifted slightly, adjusting the lantern between them. The light cast long shadows across her serious face. "I didn't come here for revenge," she said simply. "I just needed to know if you ever felt sorry, if you ever thought about Tyler at all, or if you just forgot about him and went on with your life." Max's throat tightened. "I never forgot. Not for a single day." Emma nodded slowly. "I can tell." She looked directly at him now. "Your eyes look like my mom's, like they're carrying something too heavy." The comparison stunned him into silence. The idea that his pain might resemble that of a grieving mother seemed impossible, almost offensive. His suffering was deserved. Hers was not. "Tyler was teaching me to ride a bike when it happened," Emma said suddenly. "He was really patient. Never got mad when I fell. He was coming back from the store to get Band-Aids for my knee when—" She stopped, looking down at her hands. Max closed his eyes, the image unbearable. "I'm not saying I forgive you," Emma said, her voice firm despite its softness. "I don't think I can do that yet. Maybe not ever." "I understand," Max whispered. "I wouldn't expect you to." "But I needed to see that you weren't a monster," she continued. "That you didn't just walk away and forget. That's why I come here every year. I was waiting." The simplicity of her words struck Max with their profound weight. All these years, while he had been riding past, too cowardly to stop, she had been waiting. Waiting to see if the man who took her brother carried that burden or if he had cast it aside. "Tyler would want me to be brave," Emma said. "That's what Grandma tells me. Being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means doing the right thing anyway." Max looked at this child, this remarkable child who carried wisdom far beyond her years, and felt something shift inside him. Not forgiveness, Not yet. But perhaps the first fragile possibility that his life didn't have to end with what he had done. Max hunched forward, his massive shoulders curved inward like a man awaiting sentence. The leather of his jacket creaked as he shifted his weight, preparing himself for the judgment he knew he deserved. His weathered face, lined with years of hard living and harder regrets, looked ghostly in the pale light filtering under the bridge. "Emma," he said, his voice rough. "I don't expect you to understand this, but I would give anything, my life, everything I have, to go back and change what happened that day." Emma reached into her school bag again and pulled out a small photo album with frayed edges. She opened it carefully, her small fingers handling each page with reverence. "This was Tyler," she said, turning the album so Max could see. Max forced himself to look. The smiling boy in the photos had dark hair that fell across his forehead and a wide grin that showed a missing front tooth. In one picture, he wore a baseball uniform, proudly holding up a trophy. In another, he had his arm around a much younger Emma, both of them making silly faces at the camera. "He was really good at making people laugh," Emma said softly. "Mom says I was having a bad day once, and he spent the whole afternoon pretending to be different animals until I couldn't stop giggling." Max's throat tightened. He didn't deserve to know these things, these precious details about the boy whose life he had stolen. And yet he couldn't look away from the photos, couldn't stop himself from trying to absorb every detail of the face he had never properly seen. "He used to save half his allowance every week to buy comic books," Emma continued, turning another page. "But then one day I saw him give all his money to a homeless man outside the grocery store. When I asked why, he said some things were more important than Spider-Man." She traced her finger over a photo of Tyler building a sand castle at the beach. "He never stayed mad at anyone for long," she said. "Even when kids at school were mean to him for wearing glasses, he would just shrug and say, 'They must be having a really bad day to act like that.'" Max closed his eyes briefly, the weight of these stories pressing down on him. Each word made the boy more real, more human. Not just a terrible mistake from his past, but a complete person with dreams and kindness and a future that should have been. "Your brother sounds like he was special," Max said quietly. "The kind of person this world needs more of." Emma nodded, her eyes still fixed on the album. "He was. He always told me that holding on to anger was like carrying around a heavy backpack full of rocks. It just makes you tired and doesn't help anything." She closed the album and hugged it to her chest. "The day before the accident, I was mad at him because he wouldn't let me use his new colored pencils," she said, her voice dropping to almost a whisper. "I told him I hated him and slammed my door. The next day, he left the pencils outside my room with a note that said, 'I'll always love you, even when you're being a rock collector.'" A tear slid down her cheek, but her voice remained steady. "It took me a while to understand what he meant, about the rocks." Max sat perfectly still, hearing not just her words but the incredible wisdom behind them. This child, carrying such profound loss, somehow understood what many adults never learned. "My grandma says Tyler wouldn't want his memory to make me bitter," Emma said, looking up at Max with eyes that seemed far older than her years. "She says he'd want his life to bring more kindness into the world, not more hatred." She tucked the album back into her school bag with careful movements. "I think about that a lot, about what Tyler would want." Her small hand rested on top of the school bag. "And I don't think he would want me to hate you forever." Max's throat constricted as Emma's words hung in the air between them. The child's wisdom struck him with the force of a physical blow. After years of running from his past, hiding in the rumble of his motorcycle engine and the isolation of endless highways, he found himself cornered by grace from the most unexpected source. I don't— His voice failed him. He cleared his throat and tried again. I don't know what to say. Emma watched him with those solemn eyes. You don't have to say anything. But he did. For perhaps the first time in his life, Max felt the urgent need to make a promise he would actually keep. Emma, I can't undo what I did, he said, his gravelly voice barely audible over the occasional car passing overhead. I took something precious from you and your family, something that can never be replaced. He rubbed his weathered hands together, the tattoos on his knuckles fading into shadow as he interlaced his fingers. I've spent 15 years running, drinking, trying to forget. He shook his head slowly. But I never could. Not really. Your brother's face, what I imagined it to be, it followed me everywhere. Emma's expression remained unchanged, patient beyond her years. I don't deserve your kindness, Max continued. I don't deserve a second chance, but if you're willing to give me one, I swear to you, Emma. His voice broke. I swear on everything I am that I will spend every day I have left trying to make amends. He straightened his shoulders, sitting taller than he had in years. Not just to you, to this world your brother loved, the world I made darker by taking him from it. The concrete beneath them was cold and hard, but Max hardly noticed. The physical discomfort paled in comparison to the weight of this moment. He reached slowly into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small, worn leather wallet. From it, he extracted a tattered photograph. This is my daughter Lily, he said, holding it out for Emma to see. A teenage girl with a hesitant smile looked back at them. I haven't seen her in almost 8 years. I lost her too, but not like you lost Tyler. I lost her because I couldn't face my own mistakes. Emma took the photo carefully, studying the girl's face. She looks sad, she observed. Max nodded, the truth of that simple statement piercing him. She was. Because of me. He gently took the photo back, looking at it as if seeing it anew through Emma's eyes before returning it to his wallet. I'm going to find her, he said with quiet determination. I'm going to tell her I'm sorry, and then I'm going to show you, that people can change. The traffic above had thinned as midnight approached. In the relative quiet, Max's words seemed to take on physical substance. I can't bring Tyler back, but I can live the way he did, helping others, being kind, making this world a little better. If you'll let me, I'd like to start by helping you and your family. Emma studied him for a long moment, her face serious beyond her years. I can't forgive you, she finally said. Not completely, not yet. Max nodded. I understand. But Tyler would want me to give you a chance, she continued. So I will. She held out her small hand, not for him to shake, but with palm upturned, a gesture of tentative possibility rather than sealed agreement. You have to prove it, though, she added. Words aren't enough. Max looked at her outstretched hand with a mixture of wonder and profound humility. This child was offering him something he had never given himself, the chance to become better than his worst mistake. I understand, he said softly, carefully placing his large, calloused hand near hers, without quite touching it. I won't let you down, Emma. Not again. The first hints of dawn painted the horizon in pale blues and soft pinks, chasing away the darkness that had blanketed them through the night. Max's joints ached from sitting on concrete for so many hours, but he hardly noticed the discomfort. His mind was too full of what had happened, what had changed during this long night beneath the bridge. Emma yawned and rubbed her eyes with small fists. Despite her maturity, she was still just a child who had spent a night without sleep. We should get you home, Max said gently. Your family must be worried. Emma nodded, suddenly looking much younger in the growing light. My aunt probably is. She knows I come here every year, but I usually get back before she wakes up. Max frowned slightly. You came here alone? In the dark? I'm not supposed to, Emma admitted, looking down at her shoes. But Tyler was my brother. I had to come. Max's heart squeezed painfully in his chest. This brave, stubborn child had risked her safety to honor her brother's memory, the brother he had taken from her. Well, you're not going home alone, he said firmly. I'm going to make sure you get back safely. Emma gathered her treasures carefully, the teddy bear, the drawings, the letters, and tucked them back into her school bag. Max watched her small, methodical movements, reminded again of how young she was to carry such an old grief. Do you want me to fix that strap before we go? He asked, pointing to where the worn fabric was coming loose from the bag. Emma hesitated before nodding. She handed him the bag reluctantly, as if parting with a piece of herself. Max reached into the small tool pouch he kept on his belt and pulled out a thin leather strip and a small awl. With practiced hands that had maintained motorcycles for decades, he carefully threaded the leather through the torn fabric, reinforcing the failing strap. There, he said, handing it back. That should hold much better now. Emma inspected his work, running her fingers over the repair. Thank you, she said quietly. As they prepared to leave their concrete sanctuary, Max looked around at this place that had been the scene of two life-changing moments for him. 15 years apart. The first had been born of cowardice and selfishness. This one, he hoped, marked the beginning of something better. Ready? He asked. Emma nodded, shouldering her repaired bag. They emerged from beneath the bridge together, blinking in the strengthening light. The world seemed strangely normal, cars occasionally passing, birds beginning their morning songs, as if it didn't recognize the significance of what had happened during the night. I live that way, Emma said, pointing toward a neighborhood of modest homes, visible a few blocks away. Max nodded, suddenly aware of how they might appear. A small girl and a weathered biker with his Hell's Angels cut still visible beneath his leather jacket. He removed the vest and tucked it into his saddlebag. Is it okay if I walk beside you? He asked, understanding that trust was still fragile between them. Emma considered this, then nodded. Just not too close. My aunt might be watching from the window. Of course, Max agreed. He understood her caution and respected it. They began walking side by side, keeping a careful distance between them. Max shortened his stride to match her smaller steps. What will you tell your aunt? He asked, after they'd gone a block in silence. Emma shrugged. I don't know yet. Maybe not everything. Not right away. Max nodded. Whatever you decide is okay, but I hope someday I can talk to her myself. They continued walking as the sun climbed higher, casting long shadows ahead of them. Birds darted overhead, and sprinklers hissed to life in nearby yards. The ordinary morning unfolded around them, oblivious to the extraordinary night that had passed. With each step away from the bridge, Max felt something shifting inside him. A burden lightening, if only slightly. This was just the beginning, he knew. Real redemption would take much more than a single night of truth or a morning walk. But for the first time in 15 years, he was walking toward something instead of away. The neighborhood came alive as they walked. Sprinklers clicked on, casting rainbows in the morning light. A newspaper delivery car rolled slowly down the street. An older man in a bathrobe collected his mail, giving them a curious glance as they passed. Emma walked with her head down, clutching her repaired school bag close to her chest. She seemed to know every crack in the sidewalk, turning corners without hesitation. Max followed quietly, respecting her lead. I live with my aunt, Emma said suddenly, breaking the silence. Since the accident. Max nodded, careful not to push. Has it been just you two all this time? Emma kicked a small stone, watching it skitter across the pavement. Yeah. My mom, she couldn't handle it after Tyler died. She tried, but... Her voice trailed off. I understand, Max said softly, though the words felt inadequate. Another life he had damaged, without ever knowing. They turned onto a street lined with small, aging houses. Most had tidy yards, but a few showed signs of neglect. Overgrown grass, peeling paint, sagging porches. My aunt works a lot, Emma continued, gesturing toward a faded blue house 3 doors down. Sometimes she has to do double shifts at the hospital. She's a nurse's aide. Max took in the details of the house as they approached. The missing shutter, the cracked walkway, the porch light still burning despite the morning sun. It wasn't run down exactly, but it had the tired look of a place where maintenance happened only when absolutely necessary. Is she good to you? Max asked carefully. Emma shrugged. She tries. She's just really tired all the time. She paused at the edge of the property. And sad. Tyler was her nephew too. Max felt another wave of shame wash over him. The ripples of his actions had spread far beyond what he had ever imagined. She doesn't really understand about the bridge, Emma continued. She says I need to move on, but... She clutched her bag tighter. How can I forget my brother? You shouldn't have to, Max said quietly. But maybe there are better ways to remember him than sitting alone under a bridge at night. Emma looked up at him, her eyes suddenly sharp. I wasn't alone this time. The simple observation struck Max deeply. No, he agreed. You weren't. They stood at the end of the walkway leading to her house. The curtains in the front window moved slightly. My aunt's awake, Emma said. She's probably worried. Max nodded, keeping his distance. Will you get in trouble? Maybe a little, but she works today, so she'll be too tired to stay mad for long. Emma's matter-of-fact tone revealed more about her life than her words did. Emma. Max hesitated, unsure how to ask what he needed to know. Do you have people to talk to? Friends? Someone at school? Emma looked down at her shoes. Not really. Kids think I'm weird, and the counselor at school always wants me to talk about my feelings. She made a face. I don't like that. Max understood all too well. He'd avoided facing his own feelings for 15 years. What about dinner? Does your aunt cook for you? Sometimes. Mostly we have frozen stuff, or I make sandwiches. She shrugged again, that small adult gesture that seemed so out of place on her shoulders. It's okay. I know how to take care of myself. Max felt something twist inside him, a protectiveness he hadn't experienced since his daughter was young. This child had lost so much, and now she was essentially raising herself while her aunt worked endless shifts to keep them afloat. Emma, he said gently, I meant what I said last night. I want to make things right, however I can. She studied him with those old eyes in a young face. I should go in now. Aunt Jenny is watching. Max nodded, taking a step back. Will you be okay? For the first time that morning, Emma smiled faintly. I'm always okay. That's what grown-ups want to hear, right? The simple truth of her statement hit Max like a physical blow. This child had learned to be okay, because no one had the time or energy to handle anything else. He watched as she walked up the cracked path toward the house, her small shoulders squared beneath the weight of her repaired school bag. The front door of the blue house opened before Emma reached it. A thin woman in scrubs stood on the threshold, arms crossed tightly over her chest. Her face showed a mixture of worry and fatigue, dark circles prominent under her eyes. "Emma Marie, where on earth have you been?" Her voice carried across the yard, sharp with concern. Emma turned back to look at Max, who stood awkwardly at the sidewalk's edge. The morning sun highlighted his weathered face and the patches on his leather vest. "I should go," he said quietly. "Your aunt seems upset." The woman's attention shifted to him, her posture stiffening. "Who are you?" Her voice carried both fear and protective anger as she hurried down the steps toward Emma. Max took another step back, painfully aware of how he must look. A large, intimidating Hell's Angel standing near a young girl at dawn. He raised his hands slightly, a gesture of peace. "I found her under the bridge, ma'am," he explained, keeping his voice gentle. "I just wanted to make sure she got home safe." Emma's aunt pulled the girl close, eyes narrowed with suspicion. "Under the bridge? Emma, what were you doing there? You know you're not supposed to leave the house at night?" Emma stared at the ground. "It was yesterday. For Tyler." Understanding softened the woman's face, though worry remained. She glanced between Emma and Max, clearly struggling to make sense of the situation. "She was safe with me," Max said carefully. "When I realized she was alone, I couldn't just leave her there." "And you are?" The question hung in the air. Max hesitated. How could he explain who he was? A stranger? A protector? The man responsible for this family's deepest pain? "His name is Max," Emma said, looking up at her aunt. "He helped fix my school bag." The woman's eyes remained cautious. "Thank you for bringing her home, but I need to get Emma inside now. We have things to discuss." She guided Emma toward the house, the conversation clearly over. Emma looked back over her shoulder. "Bye, Max." Max nodded, rooted to his spot on the sidewalk as they disappeared inside. The door closed with a soft click, leaving him alone with the morning birds and distant traffic. He walked slowly back to his motorcycle, each step heavy with indecision. What now? Should he walk away? Was his presence in Emma's life going to help, or only cause more pain? Sitting on his bike, key in hand, Max stared at the faded blue house. The curtain moved again, the aunt watching to make sure he left. He understood her caution. In her position, he would feel the same. But he couldn't just ride away. Not again. Not from this neighborhood, this family, this responsibility. He started his motorcycle but didn't put it in gear immediately. Instead, he pulled out a small notepad and pen from his jacket pocket. He wrote his name, Max Reeves, and his phone number. After a moment's hesitation, he added, "If Emma ever needs anything, anytime." He folded the paper carefully and walked it back to the house, placing it between the screen door and the main door. Then he returned to his bike, knowing the aunt would likely throw the note away. But he had to try. As he prepared to leave, Max made a silent promise to himself. This neighborhood would see him again, not lurking or intruding, but present, responsible. He would find appropriate ways to be there for Emma without overstepping boundaries. Maybe the local community center needed volunteers. Perhaps there were legitimate ways to offer support to a struggling single guardian and her niece, without causing more disruption. He looked back at the house one last time, before putting on his helmet. This time, he wouldn't disappear. This time he would face the consequences of his actions and take responsibility, not just through guilt and regret, but through steady, meaningful presence. The journey toward redemption had only just begun. Max sat at a corner table in the local diner, nursing his third cup of coffee. The morning rush had passed, leaving only a few scattered customers thumbing through newspapers or tapping on phones. The waitress had stopped giving him curious glances an hour ago. her initial wariness of his leather vest and weathered appearance fading as he remained quietly in his corner. He stared at Emma's school bag sitting on the chair beside him. She had left it with him when he promised to fix the broken strap properly. Now the worn blue backpack seemed to stare back at him, a silent reminder of all he had to make right. "What am I doing?" he murmured to himself, running a calloused hand over his face. For years, he'd been drifting, town to town, job to job, never staying long enough to form connections or face consequences. The weight of what happened under that bridge had pushed him onto his motorcycle and into a life of constant motion. But running hadn't erased what he'd done. It had only delayed this moment of truth. Outside the diner window, normal life unfolded. People walked to work, mothers pushed strollers, an elderly couple held hands crossing the street. For so long, Max had watched life from the edges, never feeling he deserved to participate. He pulled out his wallet and found the small, creased photograph he always carried. His daughter Sarah, at 8 years old, laughing on a swing set. He had missed her growing up, missed her high school graduation, missed everything that mattered because he couldn't face his failures as a father. "Not this time," he said softly, tucking the photo away. He signaled for the check. 20 minutes later, Max walked into the local hardware store, the bell above the door announcing his arrival. A middle-aged man behind the counter looked up from his inventory list. "Help you find something?" The man's eyes flickered briefly to the patches on Max's vest. "Need some supplies for a repair job?" Max said, holding up Emma's school bag. "Straps are coming apart. Figure she needs something that'll actually hold." The clerk nodded and led him to an aisle with various fasteners, buckles, and strong nylon strapping. "School's starting soon. Good timing to fix it up." Max selected heavy-duty materials, taking his time to find pieces that would work well together. He added a small sewing kit and some waterproofing spray to his basket. "Doing this for your granddaughter?" the clerk asked as he rang up the items. Max paused, the question catching him off guard. "No," he said finally. "Just helping someone who needs it." Back on his motorcycle, Max rode to a small park several blocks from Emma's house. He didn't want to hover near her home. That would only make her aunt more suspicious. Instead, he found a quiet bench in the shade and laid out his supplies. He examined the school bag carefully. The main strap was completely torn, hanging by a few threads. The zipper stuck halfway, and the bottom corners were fraying badly. It was clear the bag had been repaired many times before, with uneven stitches and mismatched thread holding parts together. Max threaded a needle, his large fingers working with surprising dexterity. Years of maintaining his own motorcycle and patching his gear had given him skills he rarely acknowledged. He removed the broken strap entirely and began attaching the new, stronger one with careful stitches. As he worked, his mind drifted to Emma and her life. A girl who visited the site of her brother's death alone, who carried a school bag falling apart at the seams, who lived with an aunt clearly stretched thin. How many other ways was she being let down by the adults in her life? By him, most of all. He reinforced the bottom corners with extra material, replaced the broken zipper pull, and applied waterproofing spray to protect against rain. When he finished, the bag looked almost new again, sturdy, functional, ready to support whatever she needed to carry. It wasn't enough. He knew that. A fixed school bag couldn't make up for a lost brother. But it was something real, something tangible. A first step. The day after fixing Emma's school bag, Max drove by her school during afternoon dismissal. He parked his motorcycle across the street, staying back far enough not to draw attention, but close enough to spot her small figure among the crowd of children. He watched as she walked home alone, her newly repaired blue backpack secure on her shoulders. He didn't approach her that day. Instead, he simply made sure she arrived safely at her aunt's modest apartment building before riding away. The next afternoon, he followed the same routine, only this time Emma spotted him. Their eyes met across the street. She didn't smile, but she didn't look away either. She gave a small, almost imperceptible nod before continuing her walk home. By the third day, Max had found the courage to cross the street. "How's the bag holding up?" he asked, keeping a respectful distance as they walked. "Good," she replied, adjusting the strap. "You fixed it better than anyone ever has." They walked in silence for half a block before she spoke again. "My aunt wants to know who you are." Max nodded. "That's fair. I'd like to meet her properly sometime." Emma studied him with those serious eyes that seemed too old for her young face. "I told her you're helping me remember Justin." She didn't ask more questions after that. The following week fell into a pattern. Max would meet Emma after school 3 days a week, walking her partway home. Their conversation started small: school subjects she liked, books she was reading, simple things. Max began bringing her an apple or granola bar, noticing how quickly she ate them. "You hungry today?" he asked one afternoon when she devoured the sandwich he brought in record time. Emma shrugged. "Aunt Deb works double shifts sometimes. There's food at home, but—" She didn't finish the thought. The next day, Max arrived with grocery bags. Emma's eyes widened at the sight. "I'm not giving you charity," he said before she could protest. "But I remember what it's like to open an empty fridge. Your aunt works hard. This is just being neighborly." When they reached her apartment, Emma hesitated. "Do you want to come up? Aunt Deb won't be home for hours." Max shook his head. "Not without meeting your aunt first. That wouldn't be right." He handed her the groceries. "But I'll wait down here until you're safely inside." 2 weeks after their night under the bridge, Max finally met Emma's aunt. A tired-looking woman in her early 30s with Emma's same dark hair. She stood in the apartment doorway with crossed arms and suspicious eyes. "So you're the biker who's been walking my niece home?" "Yes, ma'am," Max said, removing his sunglasses. "Max Holloway. Emma told me about you, about what happened with Justin." Her voice was tight, controlled. "Why are you here now? After all this time?" Max met her gaze directly. "Because I can't change what happened then, but I can try to help now." Their conversation was brief but meaningful. Deb, was raising Emma alone since her sister had fallen apart after Justin's death. She was doing her best with limited resources and little support. "I'm not looking to intrude," Max assured her, "just to help where I can." By the end of the first month, Max had become a regular presence. He built a simple desk for Emma's schoolwork, fixed the leaky kitchen faucet, and started teaching Emma basic motorcycle maintenance in the parking lot. Something that brought the first real smile to her face. "Justin liked engines too," she told him one Saturday afternoon as they polished chrome parts together. "He was going to build cars when he grew up." Max nodded, feeling the familiar ache of what he'd taken from the world. "Tell me more about him," he said softly. As autumn progressed, their bond strengthened. Emma began to look for his motorcycle when school let out. Max found himself planning his days around her schedule. He helped with homework, attended her school science fair, and made sure there was always food in the apartment. One crisp October afternoon, as they walked through a park scattered with red and gold leaves, Emma reached out and took his hand. The simple gesture nearly brought Max to his knees. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" Max asked, his voice rough with emotion. "For coming back, for staying, for helping me remember Justin in a good way now." Max squeezed her small hand gently. The weight of his guilt hadn't disappeared. It never would. But alongside it now grew something else: purpose, connection, and the first fragile roots of healing. I hope you like this story. Please share what's your favorite part of the story and where in the world you are watching from. Have a wonderful day.